Hello and good afternoon, and welcome once again to Better Than Before Live on Facebook in the Ecuadorian afternoon. I'm Dave Edelstein, here to talk to you about all things relating to relating and communicating and being mindful when we do it, and just getting along better with the people around us. Today, I thought I would actually sort of take a step back, rather than going on to the specifics of my life or my work. I thought I would just do a more overview kind of comment about the importance of effective communication in life. Speaking of effective communication, I've been enjoying very effective communication with a wonderful business coach, Danielle D., who I will also shout out on my postings so that you can find her if you need business advice. She's just great, really goes the extra mile, and I am grateful for her help. But in talking with her, I realized that maybe it was time for me to take a step back. I haven't done this in a while, and just talk about how important it is to communicate effectively if we're going to achieve our goals in the major life area of getting along with others and relating. Well, there are those who will dispute it. My understanding of human biology is that humans are an essentially social species. Primates are generally social, and we are generally social. If you think about it, you know, an organism as vulnerable as we were in our early days of existence on the planet would have definitely needed to work together in a group to survive. And in fact, language skills give us more ability to work together as a group quickly, efficiently, and effectively than almost all other organisms. There are some fantastic group organisms like ants who are able to communicate chemically, and their grouping power also is a key to their survival. So when we talk about communication skills, we're talking about probably the main social skill, the main thing that makes it possible for humans to be what we are, to create and produce and manufacture and dominate the planet the way that we do. Putting aside for the moment the question of whether human domination of the planet is really in our or the planet's interest, it's still, no matter how you look at it, communication is power. The ability for a group to communicate well can give that group power. The ability for an individual to organize and lead groups very much depends on a person's communication skill. The ability to attract business, the ability to attract a mate, the ability to be an effective parent, the ability to be an effective spouse, all of these things, the ability to be an effective teacher. I was a teacher for a long time, as I've mentioned before, and if I was effective at all, it's so much due to the fact that I communicate. And effective communication, as I've also mentioned often before, always depends not only on how you speak and how much you speak, but how much you listen. Effective communication depends on developing understanding between the two or more people who are involved in the conversation. I'm an older guy, so I focus a lot on the analog world and analog communication. I'm not an expert in mass communication or digital communication. But what I do have a strong feel for is when people are talking to each other, which I guess we do less and less of nowadays as we bury ourselves in our telephones. I'm not much of a telephone guy either, because when it comes down to relating, this important life area where we connect with other people for the purposes of completing work, making creative projects, team sports, being a family, loving somebody, that really comes through oral communication. That really comes through talking directly to the people involved. Texting and messaging and so on are just lack the same power. Why? Well, in some cases, texting is a disadvantage because you can read it and think about it before you respond. But in most cases, the loss of information from not being able to read body language, tone, facial expression, all of these other elements that go into communicating is a big loss of additional information expressed. And if you are not present to do that, or if the communication has been reduced strictly to letters on your telephone, there's a lot of information that's not there. One thing that I've noticed about Facebook is that it's extremely difficult to be ironic on Facebook. My sense of humor depends heavily on irony. I am not a sarcast exactly, but I am an ironist. And sometimes I'll make what I think are pretty wise cracks on people's Facebook posts, and I'll get these very angry reactions because the ironic tone, the self-denying element of irony is absent. So I don't make posts like that anymore, although once in a while I'll do one because I can't resist, and I'll put something like irony alert so that people can be clued in. But just something like that, which is a small part of communication, it's entertainment communication, joking, irony, sarcasm, those forms of communication can't be done well in text. And there's a lot of other communication that can't be done as well in text. Certainly romantic or emotional conversation just gets washed out. You don't hear the tone, you don't hear the sound, the urgency, the feeling in the other person's voice. So effective communication, for me, really still, perhaps again, just because I come from a previous generation, just because I've been around a long time, to me, still the most powerful communication is the spoken word, which was available before writing was invented, which was available as the first human form of communication that distinguished us from other animal species. So for me, this is still a really essentially human form of communication. And then there's the issue that we often don't do it effectively. You'd think that given, as I've said, how much our survival as a species has depended upon speech and listening, we'd be better at it. But most of what we know about communicating through the spoken word, we learn from our parents, and our parents are widely variable role models as communicators. Some of our parents were terrific communicators. Some of us had moms and dads who really listened to us and tried to understand us and modeled that behavior before responding to us and gave us that caring depth of understanding. And others of us had parents who just didn't get it, who just found communicating with children very frustrating. Vocabulary limitations, lack of awareness, lack of experience, lack of common ground. Somehow it was just very tough for them to model that kind of skill. And I would venture to say that with all the goodwill in the world, many parents just not great communicators. I think that I, as a parent, had my ups and downs as a communicator. I've learned a lot more about communicating since then. Also, even in fairly good parental communication, it tends to be very top-down. I'm the parent, I have more experience, I have a view of life that isn't available to you yet. And I'm going to tell you to do certain things as a child to protect you from what's coming in life. And that's a very, if it were between a pair of adults, that would be a very aggressive way to communicate, really. It would be a very unfair way to communicate. But it's a form of communication that is a big part of family life. When we get married, and sometimes worse after we have children, the tendency to communicate in that very top-down way can be extremely irritating to our spouses, can be a huge problem. We need to learn communication skills. And now I have heard that, in moments of stress, communication skills go out the window and people just start losing it. And that's where mindful communication comes in, and why I talk about mindfulness so much. We need to stay on top of our emotions if we're going to really, truly connect with other people. If we're just a ball of emotional energy, we're very hard for other people to deal with. We can even be hard for ourselves to deal with. That explosive rush of feeling can really make us make foolish choices and behave in ways that we later regret. Emotional people can be very attractive. They bring an intensity to emotional relationships that's very exciting. But if they can't turn it on and turn it off, if they have no control over that, if their emotions are just constantly spilling over, they tend to burn out the very relationships to which they're so committed. Their emotions make them tremendously full of feeling and in joy and commitment and love. But the other emotions, the survival emotions, can really blow things apart, can be too hard for another person to handle, and can drive the other person to behave in emotional ways where nobody's talking rationally, where nobody's making sense, where it's all just feeling and there's no ability to come to mutually beneficial decisions, because nobody can decide what's mutually beneficial. There's no reasoning going on. There's always got to be a bit of a balance. There's always got to be a bit of a balance. So I'm not going to go on much longer. This is about as long as I ever go in a video. But I'm going to say that, yes, effective communication is extremely important to our quality of life. And it's something that can be learned, and in many cases needs to be learned. And if I can ever help you with that, just let me know. If you've enjoyed this video and feel that its content is useful to people you know, please like and share it around. My reach is only so far. Please like and share it around, and I'll see you again, and we'll talk more about communication again tomorrow. I think tomorrow I'll address the issue of tone. Tone. Yes, I think tomorrow I'll address the issue of tone. And I'll be seeing you again soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.